Greetings and hello again. This here is the ancient spirit, Tralaka, here speaking in spirit, and very, very grateful that many of you are listening or watching my videos. I thank you very much. Now, video 71. The huge gash on the side of Mars that can be seen by the NASA satellites even when they go around Mars. They have claimed that a wayward moon did that damage. What if I would tell you that the actual design of that rip on the surface of Mars does not actually look like a moon hit it, but from a dreadnought class battleship that was between 3 to 5 miles in length and 2/3 of a mile wide and nearly 14 stories tall. Because of that, large rip on Mars is too straight to be that from a moon. It is also too focused in its measurements. The file I was being explained these things from at one of the off-world libraries I like to go visit in my dream time or in my meditations, that off-world libraries show different aspects of a planet or moon getting hit by a wayward moon or planet of this size or that size and that angle or that angle versus a brushing into and shoving that a planet or moon as it brushed up against, shoving all the dirt or mountain rocks into a glacier movement manner. Only it was just a few short days of contact in this situation. If it truly Mars was hit and hit and run by another moon, it would look very much more like leftover from a glacier in the way all of the rocks and dirt were moved. As you can see on the rip on the surface of Mars closely, or more closely, with an open mind, you see a globe, Mars, that looks like an eraser block you used in grade school for those of us who grew up in the 60s and 70s. And you took and dragged it on its edge through the frosting on a cake. This here would mean for that moon that they claim to have hit it, so the scientists can keep getting paid for the deceptions they get paid to say to keep the humans asleep. For a moon to have made marks like that on the surface of Mars, from the removed point of view as I can see things, this is what had to have occurred. Okay, the moon would have had to have had that was coming to strike Mars would have had to have a very long chain of mountains on it, most likely in excess of 3 miles in height, on a perfectly straight line and perfectly lined up like the flatness of your kitchen table outwards. So when that moon hit Mars, it cut it like that. This this creates a few questions besides common sense. We'll talk that later. A hit by a moon with a long chain of perfectly straight line mountains, and just in that perfect zone to line up with the Mars surface to create the very deep rip and not leave a massive amount of visiting moon mountain at the beginning and massive amounts at the end of the rip and farther in a line past that ripped area on Mars that would have been of soil and rocks and boulders from both Mars and from the visiting moon, should that had happened, that it would have left behind after the hit and run ended. Oh, wow. This should cause many to question the deceptions that these different TV shows and that are trying to claim how the moon hit this. When you can read it from a different library off world, and you can look at things, in meditations, in a closer situation. uh, please, because my friends, here is the rest of the point. Okay, should a rogue moon had hit, as I have described above, the amount of very large meteors getting lashed about in space between Mars and Earth, or then in the direction the planet, the moon was heading to next. It was heading for, with many, I'm saying, semi truck size boulders and meteors, and big dump truck size boulders spinning wildly out of control in space. The first a couple thousand of years after the impact on Mars would, if it would have been heading past Earth, would have brought with those incredible sized boulders and rocks from the ripped apart mountain, as it hit the surface, if that had happened, with a whole bunch of those, uh, with those huge rocks now in space. This would have created absolute devastation for the planet Earth. However, the Earth's moon and planet Venus may have gotten uh, the bulk of the punishment on that. However, my chips on the table here are of a dreadnought class battleship at 3.5 to 5 miles in length. Battleship or cargo ship, that something went really bad on their control deck when the flight crew even were losing control of it. Something wrong, something dreadfully bad happened. Or even a concept that a ship that size purposely crashed onto the planet, perhaps to try to rid the planet of its citizens that they have been so long fighting against. A crash that size would burn for months, depending on what was used for the ship's fuel and power plant. A crash that big may have caused the atmosphere to be set on fire. A massive amount of burning would have caused the Mars weather system most likely to break because of burning of that such a large ship with such a hot temperature. This is without knowing what kind of power that massive ship could have had, or if it was or was not the ship's massive engines burned up or buried by impact in the soil on Mars. I truly feel that all around that rip on Mars will be found many small fragments of that long ago crashed supersized ship. Though in many thousands of years of blowing sands and stones there on Mars, it got covered up, as things have a tendency to do. Okay, though some of the fragments, I believe that the Mars rovers of NASA that's on Mars, they're going to see some with their little gadgets that Mars rover uses and sends the pictures back to Earth. I like to also tell you from experience that there was a time in the planet Mars past, its inhabitants went through a couple of small scale nuclear war engagements also, with super technology against different species who had wanted to claim Mars for themselves. All right, this here is the ancient spirit Tralaka. As always, be safe, my friends, and expand your mind to understand the bigger pictures and possibilities in life. Good night.